Late in the evening on April 27, 2026, at 9:47 p.m. Eastern, the Supreme Court issued an emergency order that legal analysts are calling the most dramatic federal intervention in gun rights history. In a 6-3 ruling, the court immediately halted the implementation of coordinated deadlines for assault weapon registration and confiscation across 7 states, directly impacting more than 12 million gun owners. For those holding firearms categorized as assault weapons in these states, this development instantly shields them from felony prosecution, forced surrender, and arrest warrants that were scheduled to take effect in just 72 hours. This unprecedented order freezes enforcement in California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Illinois, and Washington, pausing state requirements that would have criminalized noncompliance. The ruling grants temporary protection for common semi-automatic rifles, such as AR-15s and AK-style firearms, while the cases undergo full judicial review. Chief Justice Roberts, joined by Justices Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, voted in favor, while Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson dissented, insisting that the states should proceed with their laws. Practically speaking, owners in these 7 states no longer have to register their firearms by the looming April 30th deadline. There is no risk of confiscation, and felony charges for failing to comply are suspended. This emergency stay ensures that law-abiding gun owners retain possession of their firearms during the judicial process, marking a pivotal moment in Second Amendment jurisprudence that has not been seen since Heller. The context behind this intervention stems from a coordinated legislative push in late 2025, when these 7 Democratic-led states enacted nearly identical assault weapon laws. They targeted semi-automatic rifles with attachable magazines and one or more prohibited features, demanding registration by April 30th, 2026. Failure to comply would have carried penalties ranging from 3 to 10 years in prison, mandatory confiscation, and arrest. Despite claiming a 90-day window was adequate, state systems were plagued by failures. Websites crashed, applications were rejected without explanation, fees were exorbitant, and processing times far exceeded the deadline. By April 25th, only 8% of affected owners had successfully registered, leaving over 11 million at risk of felony charges. Emergency petitions filed with the Supreme Court detailed these systemic breakdowns and argued that the state's enforcement violated Second Amendment protections under Bruin. The court responded by staying all state enforcement provisions, including registration requirements, confiscation measures, and criminal penalties, until the petitions for writs of certiorari are resolved and subsequent proceedings conclude. The order explicitly prevents states from compelling registration, seizing firearms, or pursuing criminal liability against lawful owners of widely possessed firearms. Understanding which firearms are included under this ruling is essential. Semi-automatic rifles commonly labeled as assault weapons, including AR-15 variants and AK pattern rifles, fall under this protection. Gun owners can continue to possess them legally without fear of immediate prosecution, marking a temporary but critical victory while the broader legal battles progress. The significance of this Supreme Court intervention cannot be overstated. Emergency stays are extremely rare and only granted when there is imminent risk of irreparable harm to constitutional rights. By acting at 9:47 p.m. on April the 27th, the court ensured that millions of Americans would avoid drastic legal consequences in the final days before the original April 30th deadline. This decision not only freezes enforcement, but sets the stage for a landmark Supreme Court showdown that could definitively determine whether states possess the authority to ban firearms commonly held for lawful purposes. As the cases move toward full review, the temporary protection offers clarity to gun owners navigating a legal minefield. With deadlines halted, confiscation paused, and criminal liability suspended, the order reshapes the landscape of firearm regulation across 7 states and secures a critical reprieve for over 12 million individuals while preserving their constitutional rights. This emergency ruling underscores the gravity of the Supreme Court's role in safeguarding fundamental liberties and highlights the legal battles ahead that may permanently define the scope of Second Amendment protections in America. The emergency ruling shields a wide range of firearms. This includes AR-15 pattern rifles in every caliber, AK-style rifles, including AKM and AK-47 models, Mini-14 rifles, and other comparable semi-automatics, as well as any semi-automatic rifles equipped with detachable magazines and prohibited features. Pistol-caliber carbines, meeting assault weapon definitions, are also covered, along with any firearm legally owned before the new state bans reclassified them as assault weapons. Certain weapons remain under restrictions. Fully automatic firearms still require National Firearms Act registration. Firearms held by individuals prohibited from ownership. Weapons obtained after the laws went into effect in states that continue to ban sales, and any firearms illegal under federal law remain outside protection. The crucial point is that if these firearms were lawfully owned prior to the state bans, owners may retain them without registration, surrender, or modification. The Supreme Court's stay safeguards these existing property rights. The impact varies by state. In California, more than 2 million assault weapons are protected. New York gun owners hold over 1 million firearms now shielded. The combined total in New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Illinois, and Washington exceeds 3 million firearms. Altogether, over 6 million individual firearms, owned by more than 12 million Americans, are temporarily secured. It is important to note that this overview is educational, explaining the Supreme Court's emergency order, and should not be taken as formal legal advice. Laws can change quickly, and gun owners in affected states should document lawful possession, consult firearms attorneys, and stay updated. The stay is temporary, and the final ruling on the merits will determine the permanent outcome. Even though the deadline is paused, gun owners must take proactive steps over the next 72 hours. First, owners should thoroughly document their firearms. Gather receipts, ATF forms such as Form 40473, photos with metadata, and witness statements that can verify the date of ownership. If charges are brought later, these records provide critical proof of pre-ban possession. Second, do not attempt to register firearms during the stay. Registration is not required while the emergency order is in place, and attempting it prematurely could create legal complications. Wait for the court's final decision before taking action. Third, ensure firearms are stored securely. Even with legal possession, owners must comply with any remaining storage laws to maintain safety and legality. Fourth, consider joining and supporting gun rights organizations. Groups such as the Second Amendment Foundation, Firearms Policy Coalition, and state-level organizations are actively funding the litigation, and membership or donations help sustain these legal battles. Fifth, share this information with other gun owners. Millions remain unaware of the emergency stay and are under pressure from the looming April 30th deadline. Spreading awareness helps prevent panic and ensures legal protection is maintained. States are responding in varied ways. New Jersey and Connecticut have pledged immediate compliance, directing their attorneys general to advise law enforcement not to enforce registration or criminal penalties. California and New York are reviewing the order and are expected to issue guidance within 24 to 48 hours, indicating they may be exploring possible alternatives. Illinois and Washington have issued statements criticizing the court and hinting at enforcement for public safety despite the stay. Any attempt to enforce the law contrary to the Supreme Court's emergency order may constitute a violation of federal civil rights, and individuals should immediately contact firearms attorneys if officials attempt enforcement. Most law enforcement agencies have announced they will not pursue registration or confiscation during the stay, providing additional practical protection for gun owners. This emergency order also offers insight into how the Supreme Court may rule in the final decisions. Historically, emergency stays strongly predict the outcome of full cases. Statistical data shows that petitioners who receive an emergency stay prevail in roughly 85% of final rulings. The court rarely halts enforcement unless it believes the challenged law is likely unconstitutional. The 6-3 vote further signals the court's interpretation of the legal landscape, suggesting substantial support for Second Amendment protections and reinforcing the temporary shield now in place for millions of law-abiding gun owners. The Supreme Court's conservative bloc, including Chief Justice Roberts, Justices Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, consistently supports gun rights. Their unanimous agreement to grant the emergency stay signals a strong consensus that the challenged laws likely violate Bruin. The timing of this intervention is notable. Petitions were filed on April 24th, and by April 27th, the court acted swiftly. Such rapid action reflects recognition of immediate constitutional harm demanding urgent attention. The stay explicitly references firearms widely owned for lawful purposes, borrowing language from both Bruin and Heller. AR-15 rifles, with more than 24 million in circulation, exemplify commonly owned weapons, triggering Second Amendment protections. As these cases advance to full Supreme Court arguments, likely during the October 2026 term, observers anticipate a 6-3 or possibly 7-2 ruling overturning assault weapon bans nationwide. Gun owners should adopt a clear 90-day plan while litigation continues. First, confirm whether you reside in an affected state. This stay protects those in California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Illinois, and Washington. If you own firearms subject to these laws in these jurisdictions, you are shielded for now. Second, disregard the April 30th deadline entirely. Do not register, surrender, or modify firearms. Lawful possession continues without interference. Third, track state responses closely. Monitor official guidance from your state attorney general. And if any enforcement attempts occur despite the stay, document everything and report immediately to gun rights organizations. Fourth, prepare for permanent legal victory. The emergency stay, together with the Bruin framework, strongly indicates that assault weapon bans will ultimately be struck down. Until that final ruling, maintain the current legal status of your firearms. Fifth, refrain from purchasing newly banned firearms. The stay only preserves ownership of weapons already possessed, It does not authorize acquiring newly restricted models. Sixth, support ongoing litigation financially. These cases require millions to litigate, and the Second Amendment Foundation spent over $2 million solely on preparing emergency petitions. Donations and membership help ensure the legal teams have resources to see the fight through. Seventh, participate in elections, particularly in November 2026. The emergency stay reflects the influence of President Trump's appointments, Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Elections remain decisive in determining whether gun rights are preserved or eroded. In summary, the Supreme Court's 6-3 emergency order halts enforcement of assault weapon registration and confiscation deadlines in 7 states, safeguarding over 12 million gun owners and more than 6 million firearms. The April 30th, 2026 deadline is suspended. No registration or surrender is required. This 6-3 vote offers a strong preview of how the court may decide on the merits, reinforcing that assault weapon bans conflict with the Second Amendment under Bruin. Commonly owned rifles such as AR-15s enjoy constitutional protection, while states respond variably, some complying fully and others exploring ways around the order. Document any enforcement attempts, engage with litigation organizations, and remain vigilant. This emergency intervention represents an unprecedented Supreme Court action in the realm of gun rights. 6 justices recognized that constitutional rights were at immediate risk, stopping confiscation and criminalization designed to trigger failure just 72 hours before irreversible harm. The broader battle is not concluded until a final ruling permanently overturns these bans, expected in 2027. Until then, continue exercising your rights responsibly and support the ongoing legal efforts. Stay informed, monitor developments, and be ready for oral arguments when the court hears them. Share this information widely with all gun owners in California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Illinois, and Washington to ensure they know the April 30th deadline is paused. This is educational content. Always consult qualified attorneys for advice on your specific situation. The Supreme Court has safeguarded millions from felony prosecution, but the fight continues. Stay engaged, protect your rights, and support the ongoing litigation.